Coming up on Carolina this week, we're going to hear from a brand new state representative who will take office next year for North Myrtle Beach and other parts of the North Strand. We're also going to hear from two candidates for superintendent of schools in South Carolina who are going to be facing each other in a runoff 1 week from this Tuesday. Carolina This Week starts right now.
This is Carolina This Week. Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning. Welcome to Carolina This Week. Of course, this past week there were primary elections in South Carolina. A lot of surprises in those races. Some races are going to be heading to runoffs. A little bit later in the show, we're going to hear from Sally Atwater and Molly Spearman, both who want to be state superintendent of education. But first this morning, we're going to hear from somebody who is going to be who's new to the at least state political scene, Greg Duckworth, who beat Tracy Edge in the House District 104 race. Big news because Tracy Edge held that seat since 1996, and here you are, the newcomer, and congratulations. What do you make of your victory?
Oh, well, thank you, Tim. I guess I make of the victory the result of hard work by many, many people in the district, and then also the district voters out there that liked the message that we had brought to the people. I literally went door to door since January, and I tell people I saw the ice storms in January and the thunderstorms in June. I mean, it was quite an experience to go door to door. Very uplifting, though. You would think it would be exhausting, and yeah, it was. But the nice thing is that as you went out there, you got energized talking to the people. And my wife and I sometimes were together on the trail, and it was very obvious which doors you wanted to go visit because most of those houses were decorated in patriotic ways, whether it be, you know, ribbons on the door or a flag on a pole. But it was just kind of, it was very, you know, invigorating to see that level of patriotism out there in our community. So I like that.
Well, come January, you're going to have to go to work in Columbia on behalf of those people you met when you went door to door.
Yeah.
I want to start off by looking back a little bit to the past legislative session where a lot really came out of it. One thing is texting ban.
Right.
And it's one of those things kind of like I talked to you about tents on the beach, or I talked to a lot of local politicians about tents on the beach recently. I think it's one of those things where it kind of says a little bit about your thought process as to how you'd vote on something like that. But how would you have voted on a texting ban? I
think that the texting ban is something that's time has come and actually should have maybe come sooner. A lot of other states have adopted that. And certainly South Carolina needed to get on the bandwagon with that. I've seen some very compelling commercials on TV, on the internet. I saw one recently. It was moviegoers, and it was another country. And it was just a commercial. There was nothing being said. You could see a car driving down the road. And people in the audience, they were showing the pictures, the faces of the people in the movie audience. And they were all bored, and they're just doing this, you know, on their phones. And then, boom, there's a big crash. And I don't know how they did it, but they make it seem like a real crash, and it really startled the audience. So I think it was a great message. And it's the kind of message that we as a state probably need to get out to our drivers now that we have that law in place.
Something else is you're going to find out, being a state representative takes a lot of your time. Right. And the governor vetoed a pay raise for state lawmakers.
Right.
What do you think about that? Do you think that her argument was, well, go talk to your people about that, your constituents about that, make that argument and let them vote on it. What do you think? Is it something that the legislators should decide, or is it something the voters should decide?
I think the voters could decide that, and that would be fine with me. Quite frankly, when I signed up for this job, a pay raise wasn't even in the picture, so I don't even know what a legislator makes. I don't even care. That's not really why I'm there. I'm there to represent the people.
Let's talk about some of the money issues, taxes in particular. One thing that you might be looking at next year is the elimination of a state income tax in South Carolina. What do you think about eliminating the state income tax? I
found that to be an interesting line item on the ballot this time, and I voted yes. I will tell people I thought that was a good idea. I don't know all the statistics on it, but I remember reading somewhere recently that Florida, for example, which does not have the state income tax, has actually come out quite well by not doing that. And So maybe it'll be a very positive thing for South Carolina as well.
Where do you get revenue, though? Where do you find the money to improve the roads? And I don't have to tell you that roads aren't in the best shape in South Carolina. I think anybody who drives on the roads in South Carolina probably knows that.
I agree. I think that our infrastructure, a lot of it is in serious shape, bad shape, and roads, but bridges even more so. And that's a big concern when you have a bridge that connects an area, and that may be the one way in and out of a location that could seriously disrupt people's lives. So being on top of the sustainable maintenance of our infrastructure is key. As far as the answer of where does that money come from, I'm not exactly sure what they propose yet to offset that revenue stream, whether it be sort of like a consumption tax or what their plans are. I would need to look into that more to give you an answer.
Well, speaking of consumption tax, South Carolina has the lowest gas tax in the country, hasn't been touched since 1977. A lot of lawmakers will tell me off camera, we need to look at raising this. Right. But they won't tell me that on camera, and a lot of lawmakers are just afraid to touch it. It's a hot potato whenever you talk about raising taxes. What do you think about raising the state's gas tax?
I don't think that we should do that. Personally, I think a lot of people in this state, myself and probably you included, we're highly dependent on our vehicles, and fuel prices are going through the roof. And it's very frustrating each time I have to pull up to a gas station and fill that tank. I can remember back not too terribly long ago, 75 cents a gallon, that was pretty nice. And so I would be very hard-pressed to see any kind of a tax increase with fuel.
By the same token, and this happened to me this past spring after the ice storms, I hit a pothole, ruined my tire, had to spend a couple $100 to fix that tire.
Yeah.
Maybe had there been more money to fix roads, I wouldn't have had that pothole problem.
Yeah, you look at the roads just right across the state line in North Carolina, they're much nicer. Of course, they have a different setup there.
What's number one as you go into the state legislature starting next year? What's number one thing you want to do for the people back in Horry County?
The number one thing I want to do, and it's something that was part of my campaign strategy or promise, was to try to build the intellectual capital of our area to try to bring higher paying long-term jobs to the district. So that'll be the first thing I want to set out to do. And in order to do that, my plan is to try to work with our other legislative delegates and maybe host a few town hall style meetings to maybe have that dialogue and talk about what are the types of jobs we'd like to see here on the Strand for the future.
All right, well, you come back here and talk to me once you're state representative, Greg Duckworth, and we'll talk about some of these things, see how they're going.
That'd be my pleasure, sir.
Right.
Good to see you again.
Thank you, Greg. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with two candidates for State Superintendent of Education. Carolina This Week comes right back.